Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into the fascinating psychological science of how parental warmth and community support actually act as vital, life-saving shields for developing youth. If you've ever spent any time around teenagers, you know for a fact that adolescents can feel a lot like navigating a literal minefield. The social influences swirling around them are incredibly powerful, and the stakes for their long-term development are just incredibly high. Okay, let's kick things off with a question that literally any parent, educator, or mentor has agonizingly asked themselves when watching teenagers navigate this crazy social landscape. We see it all the time, right? Two kids, totally similar backgrounds, facing the exact same peer pressure. One just casually walks away, and the other gets completely swept up into a really risky trajectory. So what's the defining difference here? What actually dictates who gets pulled in? To figure that out, let's take a quick look at today's roadmap. We'll start with adolescence, a risky journey, then look at the parental warmth buffer, the impact of absent fathers, breaking the trauma cycle, and finally, mentors and community shields. All right, section 1, adolescence, a risky journey. Let's see how this bidirectional, reinforcing cycle of risky behavior actually gets its start. Now, what's super interesting here is how research splits this into two totally distinct psychological pathways. First up, you have the selection effect. This is when teens actively go out of their way to choose bad crowds because they are desperately seeking a place to belong. It's often to promote their own identity and self-esteem. They basically find peers who match their own internal appetite for risk. But then, on the flip side, there's the influence effect. This is your classic socialization model, where a teenager just passively follows the lead of deviant friends, conforming to whatever the group is doing, regardless of their own initial baseline. And here is where things get really dangerous. When those two effects crash into each other, it creates what psychologists call a bidirectional reinforcing cycle. Basically, a teenager hangs out with deviant peers, which bumps up their risk-taking, which then makes them want to seek out even more deviant peers. It's a massive snowball effect. It just feeds itself and poses a seriously escalating threat to a teenager's emotional and physical health. So, how on earth do we disrupt this cycle? Well, that brings us to section 2, the parental warmth buffer. To really understand how parents can shield their kids, we have to look at this totally fascinating study by Dr. Marie-Eve Daspa and her team. Instead of just handing families a boring questionnaire, they actually put them to the test in a lab using these exact steps. They purposely had parents and teens pick a hot-button issue, something they genuinely lock horns over, and told them, okay, argue about it for 15 minutes. Now, for some parents, that's just a normal Tuesday morning before school. But for researchers, it was an absolute goldmine. They were watching specifically for authentic, nonverbal reactions from the parents during the heat of the conflict. Here is the absolute kicker: how they defined warmth. Nonverbal warmth isn't about avoiding the argument or just letting your teenager walk all over you. It's about maintaining a baseline of closeness. It's a smile, leaning in, or maybe a gentle touch on the arm, even while you are actively disagreeing with them. It subconsciously communicates, hey, we might be fighting right now, but my affection for you is entirely secure. And the results of this? Honestly, they're incredible. When a parent displays that specific kind of nonverbal warmth during a conflict, it acts as a literal shield. The data showed it significantly weakens the influence of bad crowds on their children. It completely disrupts that dangerous snowball loop we talked about earlier. A teenager who feels securely attached at home, even when they're arguing with their parents, is just far less dependent on going out and seeking validation from risky peers. But we have to ask, what happens when that primary inner circle gets fractured? Let's move to section 3, impact of absent fathers. Take a look at this specific window, ages 5 to 10. This represents a highly crucial developmental period. Research shows that when a father becomes absent due to divorce during these formative years, it fundamentally alters how daughters in particular eventually make decisions, perform in school, and build their own adult relationships down the line. If we zoom out to a global scale, scholarship from developing regions like the Caribbean highlights how systemic issues like poverty and migration create these massive waves of father absency, and it's so much more than just physical absence. Experts actually categorize it into emotional absence, migratory absence where dad has to leave for work, and functional absence, which is when he might literally be sitting in the living room but is completely disengaged. All of these variations create severe, lasting emotional distress for the youth. When you look at the raw data across these studies, the fallout of that missing parental investment is staggering. Without it, we see massive spikes in identity disruption and behavioral challenges. Fascinatingly, the studies even show it disrupts the construction of a child's career stories, meaning they literally struggle to even picture or articulate a future professional life for themselves. Plus, youth without involved fathers consistently report much lower levels of academic self-concept, meaning they just flat out lack confidence in their own ability to learn and succeed. The good news, though, the shield can be broken, but it can absolutely be repaired. Section 4. Breaking the trauma cycle. For families trying to heal and build resilience after a fracture, clinical social workers use this brilliant, highly practical tool called the ACE framework. It stands for Accurate Facts, Contextualizing Causes, and Emotional Consequences. Basically, this framework guides parents or guardians in constructing a coherent narrative about the family's trauma. So instead of sweeping the past under the rug, adults are actually coached on how to share the family's real story with their kids in age-appropriate ways. Doing this helps the child finally make sense of their environment, totally removing the underlying confusion that so often drives that risky behavior.
But wait, here is the absolute most vital piece of the puzzle. What you really need to take away from this is the oxygen mask rule. Parents have to secure their own emotional oxygen mask first. These interventions literally mandate that parents practice daily relaxation techniques, like a quick 5-minute body scan. Why? Because a child's nervous system directly mirrors the adult's. You absolutely cannot calm an overwhelmed teenager if your own stress physiology is deregulated. Parental regulation is the strict, non-negotiable prerequisite to child regulation.
Finally, what if the immediate family just isn't enough or is completely absent? Section 5. Mentors and community shields. When that primary family shield takes a hit, community interventions are the ultimate backup plan. As the research explicitly notes, things like extended family care, church involvement, mentorship, and organized sports, they offer the exact same buffering effects against risky behavior that parental warmth does. They step right in and provide a brand new, stable baseline of attachment for the teen. We see a really powerful example of this at work in Black family dynamics. Cultural values like collectivism, a deep reliance on kinship networks, and natural mentoring act as profound community shields against systemic stressors. And what's amazing is the data shows that experiencing these cultural strengths actually increases a youth's relational capacity. Because they grow up seeing the immense value of an extended supportive network, these teenagers are often incredibly well-equipped and highly motivated to go out and build strong, life-saving connections with non-parental adult mentors. So, we're going to wrap up this explainer with a thought to chew on. If the psychological science definitively proves that just a single warm, guiding relationship, whether that's smiling through an intense argument, sharing a coherent story, or just being consistently present can completely alter a teenager's risky trajectory, who will you be that shield for today? If you aren't the parent, can you be the mentor?